There is a city on an island in the western Pacific where the mornings come wrapped in humidity and the faint haze of a subtropical climate that never quite lifts. It is a city of narrow streets and crowded intersections, of temples pressed between high-rise apartments, of scooters weaving through traffic in patterns that seem chaotic but are somehow never quite dangerous. It is a city that does not announce itself. It does not have the obvious grandeur of the great world capitals. It does not demand that you pay attention to it. And yet, the world pays attention, whether it knows it or not. The world depends on this place in ways that are rarely spoken aloud, but are felt everywhere, in the devices that wake us in the morning, in the screens that occupy our days, in the machinery that runs our hospitals and our banks and our infrastructure. Somewhere in the chain that connects the idea of a thing to the thing itself, there is often a link that passes through this island, through this city, through Taipei. I find myself thinking about what it means to depend on something you do not acknowledge. We have a word for that kind of relationship in personal life. We call it complicated. We call it unspoken. In the world of systems, we do not have a good word for it. We just continue. We continue relying on the thing, and we continue not talking about it. And we hope that our silence will somehow protect us from the consequences of our dependence. The city itself seems to embody this contradiction. It is incredibly productive. It is incredibly precise. The work that happens here is of a level of sophistication that most people cannot imagine. The tolerances are measured in units so small they are meaningless to ordinary experience. The processes require years of training to master. The supply chains are so intricate that a disruption in one small step can ripple outward to affect industries on the other side of the planet. And yet, when you walk through the streets, none of this is visible. You see ordinary life. You see grandmothers pushing carts of vegetables. You see children in uniforms heading to school. You see office workers buying breakfast from street vendors, eating soup and noodles standing up before heading to the metro. It looks like any other city going about its morning. The extraordinary is hidden behind the ordinary. Perhaps that is always the case with essential things. The things we truly depend on are the things we stop seeing. We see them only when they fail, when the water stops running, when the electricity goes out, when the supply is interrupted. Then, suddenly, we remember. We remember that all of this depends on something, that all of this is connected to something else. Taipei is one of those connective points. It is not the only one. The world is full of places that hold the system together in ways that are not obvious. But this place is particularly concentrated, particularly dense. The expertise that has accumulated here over the decades is not easily replicated. It exists in the people, in their hands, in their habits, in the culture of the workplaces that have evolved over time. There is a word I keep coming back to: embedded. This city is embedded in the structure of the global economy. It is not sitting on top of it. It is not adjacent to it. It is woven into it. And when something is woven into a fabric, you cannot remove it without changing the fabric itself. You cannot pull the thread without distorting the pattern. This creates a strange kind of security. Not the security of walls or weapons, not the security of treaties or alliances, though those exist too, but the security of being necessary. The security of being so interwoven with the interest of others that your survival becomes, in some practical sense, their concern as well. I do not want to romanticize this. It is not a comfortable position. It is a position of perpetual tension, of always being aware that your safety depends on your continued usefulness, that the moment you become replaceable is the moment you become vulnerable. There is an anxiety in that, even if it is not always spoken, but there is also a discipline in it, a focus. When your survival depends on your ability to deliver, you develop a culture of delivery. You do not tolerate failure. You do not accept excuses. You build systems that catch errors before they become problems. You train people to notice the small things because the small things are what keep the large things running. Walking through the older parts of the city, you can sense the layers of history. This island has been shaped by many forces, by indigenous peoples who were here first, by Chinese settlers who came centuries ago, by Dutch traders and Spanish missionaries who came and went, by Japanese colonizers who imposed a different kind of order, by the nationalist government that arrived after the war, bringing its own dreams and its own traumas. Each of these waves left something behind: a word, a custom, a building, a way of doing things. The city is a palimpsest, a text written over and over again, with traces of the previous version still visible beneath the surface. And yet, for all this history, there is something profoundly modern about Taipei. It is not a city stuck in the past. It is a city that has figured out how to be essential to the future. It has done this not through grand gestures, but through steady, patient work, through the accumulation of skills, through the building of trust. Trust is perhaps the key word here. In the world of global systems, trust is the currency that makes everything else possible. You cannot inspect every component that goes into a complex device. You cannot verify every step of a process that spans continents. At some point, you have to trust that the people on the other end are doing what they said they would do, that the parts will meet the specifications, that the deliveries will arrive on time. Taipei has built that trust over decades. It has done so by being reliable, by being consistent, by being boring, in the best sense of the word. The kind of boring that means nothing goes wrong. The kind of boring that means you do not have to worry. This is not the kind of achievement that wins prizes. It is not the kind of success that gets written about in breathless articles about innovation. It is the success of the steady hand. The success of the person who shows up every day and does the work correctly. We do not celebrate that kind of success very often, but we depend on it, absolutely. The rain comes suddenly in Taipei. You can be walking under a clear sky, and within minutes, the clouds have gathered and the water is coming down in sheets. The streets flood briefly, the scooters slow down, everyone takes shelter under the awnings of the shops, waiting for the storm to pass. And then it passes. The sun comes out, the water drains away, life continues. There is something in this rhythm that feels like a metaphor. The world throws its disruptions. The storms come. But if the foundations are solid, if the drainage is good, if the systems are designed to handle the stress, then the recovery happens quickly. The city does not collapse. It adapts. It waits. It continues. I think about the people in the factories and the labs, the engineers who spend their days solving problems that most of us could not even articulate, the technicians who operate machines so sophisticated that they cost more than most buildings, the managers who coordinate supply chains that span multiple countries and time zones. They do not think of themselves as indispensable. They probably do not think much about geopolitics at all. They are just doing their jobs, solving the next problem, meeting the next deadline. But in the aggregate, their work is what the world runs on. Their reliability is what makes our devices reliable. Their precision is what makes our systems precise. It is a distributed form of power. It is not concentrated in a single building or a single person. It is spread across thousands of workshops and offices and clean rooms. It lives in the habits of workers who have been doing the same tasks for years, refining their techniques, eliminating inefficiencies, passing their knowledge to the next generation. This is what makes it so hard to replicate. You cannot build a factory and expect to match this level of performance overnight. The machines are only part of the equation. The software is only part of the equation. The real value is in the culture, in the institutional knowledge, in the way that problems are approached and solved. And culture takes time. It takes generations. It cannot be imported or copied. It has to be grown. So the dependence continues. The world continues to lean on this place, even as it does not quite acknowledge the leaning. The ships keep arriving. The cargo keeps moving. The factories keep humming through the night. Sometimes, sitting on a rooftop bar overlooking the city at night, watching the lights stretch out to the mountains that ring the basin, you can almost feel the weight of it. The weight of all that production, all that precision, all that invisible labor. The city does not sleep. Not really. There are always lights on in the industrial districts. There are always trucks on the highways. The work continues because the demand continues, because the world continues to want more devices, more screens, more processing power, more connection. And Taipei provides, quietly, persistently, without asking for recognition. It is strange to think about how much of our modern life rests on places most of us have never visited, on people whose names we will never know, on processes we could not explain even if we tried. We live in a world of profound interdependence, and we mostly pretend that we are independent, that we are self-sufficient, that we could go it alone if we had to. But we could not. We are tied to each other in ways that are impossible to untangle. The system is too complex. The connections are too deep. We are all leaning on each other, whether we admit it or not. Taipei knows this. It has known it for a long time. It has built its position on this understanding, on the recognition that in a world of interdependence, the safest place to be is at the center of the web, where all the threads converge, where your absence would be felt immediately by everyone. It is not a glamorous strategy. It is not the strategy of conquest or domination. It is the strategy of usefulness, of making yourself so valuable that others cannot afford to let you go. And so far, it has worked. The morning comes again. The humidity wraps around the city. The scooters start their engines. The metro fills with commuters. The vendors set up their stalls. Another day begins. Another day of invisible labor. Another day of keeping the world running. The temples open their doors. The incense smoke rises. The prayers are offered to gods whose names have been spoken on this island for centuries. And the factories hum, and the ships sail, and the connections hold. It goes on. It simply goes on. Without fanfare, without acknowledgement. Just the steady rhythm of a city that knows its place in the world. And keeps working.